This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Hey everybody, Randy Patterson here with Boomerocity, and on this episode, I have a fun thing for you to watch. We've all heard stories of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and our favorite rock stars doing interesting things at hotels, like throwing TVs out, chainsawing openings into walls, things of that nature. And probably one of the hotels, one or two of those things might have happened at was at the infamous Sunset Marquis Hotel in sunny Los Angeles. It's got a fabled story, and it's finally being told in film in this documentary called If These Walls Could Rock. And in this episode, I get to talk to one of the co-producers, the co-directors of the film. His name is Craig A. Williams, and we had a lot of fun talking about this movie. I got to see it before it was released, and so I had a pretty good idea what to ask, but there are some stories. The film is there's no holds barred. So if you got a sensitive ear, this film might not be for you. I'm just warning you. I'm not saying you're a prude or that I am. Just some pretty raw stories in there. So you've been warned. So this stuff has all sorts of top shelf, or this film has all sorts of top shelf guests in there. Bruce Springsteen, Ringo Starr, Billy Gibbons, Steven Tyler, Joe Bonamassa, Nancy Wilson, on and on and on. You're going to love this movie if you like hearing about the urban legends and folklore of early rock and roll. While you're watching this interview, as I always ask, please hit like if you're enjoying it. Hit subscribe if you know there's going to be other interviews that I've already done or that are likely to come up. You don't want to miss them, so please hit subscribe. It won't cost you a dime, but it helps us out tremendously. And by all means, share our interviews with friends who you think might enjoy them. So without any further ado, here is my first of what I hope are many more interviews to come with Craig A. Williams. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity. Take care.
Hey, Randy Peterson.
Patterson. Everybody calls me Peterson, or worse. So
I guess I have to learn to read better.
Oh well, it is what it. I used to go to church at the same church as my sister and her husband, and I was talking to somebody there, and they called me my brother-in-law's name, and I corrected them. They said, "Well, you've been called worse, haven't you?" And I said, "No."
Yeah, I get called Greg all the time. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I get it all, and then of course my podcast and website and all that, it gets called everything but Boomerocity. So it's
Right. Right.
it's just part of life. You laugh and roll with it, right? So
Yes, well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
So where are you clicking in from?
So I'm in Venice, which is where my office is in Los Angeles, not Italy,
Okay.
and live down in Marina del Rey.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And you're in somewhere in Tennessee, I gather.
Well, I bounced between two places. I recently remarried. My wife has her home in Anderson, South Carolina,
Okay.
and I have my place in the Smoky Mountains of East Tennessee.
Oh, no way.
So I'm in Anderson today. So
Okay, great.
later I'll be in Sevierville. So you just never know. So,
Right.
but
That's the life of a rock star, Randy.
I wish so. Hey, I couldn't help but notice your setup in the background. That's an Apple. I'm guessing. I think I'm seeing that clearly. Tell me a little bit about your setup. I know that's not what we're on here for, but I'm looking at up updating my gear later this year,
Uh,
hopefully. And
Truthfully, that is my office mate's computer back there.
oh, okay, okay.
So I don't know too much about it other than it is like one of those brand new, it's just kind of the Apple box that I think you just
Hmm.
hook up to uh, a monitor, and he loves it.
No, that's what I'm looking at. I think it's the Apple Studio or the Mac Studio, something like that. And I'm going to look at starting doing localized AI for some features I've got planned. I'm not going to write
Okay.
music or impersonate anybody. It's going to be obvious that it's AI, but
Yeah.
it. I'd like to think it helps my productivity, but with some of the platforms I've been experimenting with, it starts out great. It's like a relationship. Starts out great, and then you see all the flaws, and then they have a forgetful memory. So
Yeah. No, and then that gets really frustrating, right?
that's
You're like,
right.
no,
That's right.
I told you already. The backdrop is an ocean, not a lake.
That's right. Or they tell you exactly what to say so they could do it right. So you copy and paste it in there, and they say, "I'm sorry, I can't do it this way." Blah blah blah. And I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but well, man, I love this documentary you and you and Tyler put together. I mean, it's right in my wheelhouse, right? Classic
Sure.
rock, all that kind of thing. And it just seems like there's a good, and I say this as in thankfulness, there's a plethora of good documentaries coming out on everything to do with the genre, with the generation, baby boomers and all that, which of course is what I'm all about. And
Mhm.
I'm just curious of all the stories you guys could have told, what led you guys to the Sunset Marquis?
Yeah, so for me, it kind of starts with a little bit of a personal story. I grew up here in Southern California, and I was kind of a nerdy honors kid growing up in the late 80s, early 90s. And I decided that my ticket to being cool was to form like a hair metal band with my other nerdy honors friends. And so we actually did that. And within a year, we were selling out shows at the Roxy and the Whiskey and the Troubadour. And,
Cool.
we were like 15, 16 years old. So we were living this kind of dual life. And there was always, this mythological place that we knew about. It was called the Sunset Marquis. And we wouldn't dare set foot in there. Like we
Ah,
knew that it's where, Guns N' Roses was hanging out and Aerosmith was hanging out and the Black Crowes were hanging out. And so, we were, realistic about our ambitions. So we ended up more at like the Travel Lodge on the corner of Highland and Hollywood Boulevard instead of the Sunset Marquis. Needless to say, I didn't become a famous rock star, but I did become a writer. And I actually wrote a memoir about those days in my life. And it had a lot of Los Angeles history, music history, Sunset Strip history. And that kind of attracted the attention of the ownership at the Sunset Marquis. And so they invited me in to write a kind of a coffee table book about the 50th anniversary of the hotel. And suddenly I find myself sitting there with Steven Tyler and Slash and Chris Robinson, and, just kind of getting to come into this, almost forbidden world that I was never allowed into before, through my writing rather than through my music. And the idea of doing a documentary was always there. I just didn't know how to do it. I didn't have the expertise or the knowledge. I mostly made my writing as a screenwriter. And I teamed up with Tyler on another show that we did on Paramount Plus called I Want to Rock, which was just kind of about the 80s metal dream and chasing that. And I was kind of a talking head on that show and a producer. And Tyler and I just instantly hit it off. He was directing the show, and we were just looking for something to do. And I was like, I wrote this book about 10 years ago about the Sunset Marquis. And he was like, yes, let's do that. And when you look at the list of people who have stayed there over the years, um, we didn't know setting out, we didn't know that we were going to be able to get Bruce Springsteen and Ringo
yeah.
Starr, all these people in the film. You hope, but you don't know that that's going to materialize or not. So, we were really lucky that people love the hotel as much as they do, and they agreed to sit down and talk with us. But, we just knew it was a place of kind of extraordinary community and connection, artists gathering, hanging out, just being themselves. And I think that's what was really important to us.
I always say that these guys have, some will say enormous talent, others will say enormous luck, or a combination of both, that they live in this, in breathe rarefied air and live in an alternate universe. And I think to a great extent that's kind of true, especially when you have some place like the Sunset Marquis. When you guys were working on this, at what moment did you realize you weren't really just doing a documentary about a hotel, but it was really more like an institution or a universe all its own? When did that click with you? Was it when you were writing the book or when you were doing the documentary?
For me, it was writing the book. People used words like vortex, and it just had this like very unique thing that was really special to people. So I kind of knew it going in. I would say for Tyler, that came during the filming and maybe even a little bit later into the filming. Once you hear certain people, once you hear Nancy Wilson and all these people saying the same thing over and over again, then it starts to dawn on you that you're in some kind of special place. There also is a physical quality when you walk in, honestly, where it just feels different. And I don't know if that's because of the people who have stayed there, and that there's some sort of energetic thing going on that you can sense. But it really does. I mean, you're in the middle of West Hollywood. West Hollywood's a nightmare. It's just there's traffic and it's noisy and it's concrete jungle. And then you walk into this place and it's like this weird garden oasis where like it just smells different. You don't know where you are, and you can just get lost in this world for a really long time. And then you go back into the restaurant and you're like, oh, that's Roger Daltrey sitting over there. Let's go, let's go say hi. So it's just there's just feels different. And it dawns on you pretty quickly, I think.
I know when I talk to artists that are recording in different, well-known recording studios, they talk about the vibe, whether it's, Abbey Road or
Right.
Electric Lady or the Record Plant or, places like that.
Yeah.
One phrase that kind of came out and I started using it was that a place kind of has its own patina,
Mhm.
just like, you know, sterling silver does, or
Sure.
gold can and all that kind of stuff. It seems like buildings, places of notoriety seem to have that, or a vibe, like you said. Go to Dealey Plaza, and when you're standing there, you just know something awful but incredible happened there,
Right.
that kind of thing. And so I imagine that's kind of like what you were feeling, not Dealey Plaza, but
Yeah.
maybe the Electric Ladyland,
Yeah, the opposite.
place.
The opposite of that. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. What when these guys, when I was watching the interview, first of all, I got to hand it to you. I'm going to get off script here a little bit, but doing what I do, it's always, who can I talk to that I think would be interesting to people? Normal fans. I'm not a journalist, I don't think, and I'm, never been on TV as a professional or anything. I do what I do because I love the genre. I love our generation. I love everything that took. I mean, I love talking about everything that took place, and I don't love everything that did take place, but back to the Kennedys. But there's this. I just love getting people to talk about their careers and such. But just because I'm excited about it doesn't mean Bruce Springsteen's going to talk to me. So you guys, I mean, my hat's off to you, man. You got the cream of the crop there. How did that happen?
Well, we like
From
to
from one interviewer to another, please tell me, how did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, we like to say that we have the greatest lineup of rock and rollers in the history of documentary film, and prove me wrong. But one of the reasons is that we have an excellent executive producer named Rick Krim, who's on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominating board. So he just has a lot of contacts with these people.
Uh,
Uh, so I think people respond to him. We also had this really great talent producer named Leah Horwitz, who also has great relationships, and she was able to kind of get to these people. The most important thing, though, is the hotel. They all did it because they've all had really special things happen to them at this place, and it means something to them. And that, again, it's the energy, it's the vibe, but it's also the people who work there, who've, some of them, like there's cleaning staff that have been there for 50 plus years.
Wow.
So they just like coming back and seeing the same people over and over again. They feel comfortable. That's really, I'd like to tell you it's because I'm an awesome interviewer and I'm and then once you get them in the room, there's an art to it, of course. And some of them went
Mhm.
much better than others did. And it's usually not the fault of the artist, it's usually the handlers who, are putting sort of pressure on you to wrap it up in a certain amount of time, or you can't ask about this or that. And so that kind of can derail things sometimes. But for the most part, we did most of the interviews at the hotel, so they were comfortable. They felt safe. Um, and they know that we're not there to kind of exploit them or try to get them to say something that they don't want to talk about. It was very just like casual, nonchalant conversation about their career, rock and roll in general. I think that's a good way to get into it with these folks, is talking about what they love doing and what they've done for their whole lives. And we found a parallel there between the life of a rock star and the life of this hotel itself. There's the rise, there's the dirty part, there's the either you clean up or you're gone phase, and then there's the kind of reinvention, which is I think where most of these survivors are now.
Well, I noticed that, a lot of the people, they were like, no, I really don't want to get into that story. But then you have Billy Bob Thornton, and he's walking up the steps saying, that's where I was having sexual relations with someone right there. And people are walking by and saying, how's it going, Billy Bob? That whole thing. So you do go from one extreme to the other, no?
Absolutely. Okay, so the rule of thumb really was that we didn't want to tell stories third hand. We didn't want to hear somebody say, one time I saw Depeche Mode do this, and have that story come out. People are older, they have kids now, they have families, they probably don't want these things told unless they're telling me that themselves. We didn't want to kind of betray that. And
Hmm.
so what you see there is a lot of people wanting to tell those stories and then saying, no, 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 I can't do that. Some of them did, but we still opted not to tell them. Billy Bob was just so open.
Yeah.
Uh, and I mean, he was just an open book, and he ended up hanging out with us all day. And it just felt like he was comfortable telling these stories. This is part of his story that he's got that phase of his life where it was, I wouldn't even say ugly. He was living the part of Bad Santa for real. And it was all
Yeah.
happening at this hotel, and he is happy to tell you about that. Uh, on the other hand, we did have stories that, Kelly Osbourne told us a story about Ozzy. And then, when we interviewed Sharon, we said, Kelly told us this story. Do you want to comment on that? And she had a really funny line about not wanting to comment on it, and then called the next day and said, can you please not include that in the film? The story that Kelly had told us. And we said, absolutely, no problem. And so again, it was just sort of a respectful approach to all of these things. Also, I just got to say, most of the Aussie stories are just gross.
Well, yeah.
They're less sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and just more like, why? Why would you do that? It's
Well,
like dealing with an 8-year-old or something. I have a 10-year-old.
you're
That's what I
right.
say a lot. It's like, why? Why would you do that? Why is the ladder next to, yeah.
I know when I started Boomerocity, I would just as a courtesy, I would say because I mean, I'm still nobody in the overall scheme of things. I'm not Rolling Stone magazine, thank God, but I know my place in the food chain here. But when I started, I mean, I hardly had any interviews, and I was just this is before everybody started doing this kind of stuff. And I would just say, hey, look, I tell you what, I'll give you veto power over this. I'll let you see the article. Back then, I was transcribing and writing articles. I said, I'll give you veto power.
Hmm.
And, first of all, very few people took me up on it. One did. They will remain nameless. I won't even hint at it. But after everything, I was ready to post it. They wrote me and asked me if I would not run the piece because of who they were talking about and how they were talking about them.
Right.
I thought it was, probably a little too careful on their part, but I honored it. I didn't argue with them over it. And, I'd rather have that credibility with them than a few clicks on my website.
Exactly. And I think that establishes trust. And if you reach out to them another time, they're probably more likely to talk to you.
Exactly. So, what's the story behind the name of this documentary, If the Walls Could Rock?
I think it actually kind of came when I was writing the book from the owner of the hotel. He said that he'd always had this idea in his back pocket for this title, and it really just stuck. I don't know if it was sort of a joke, but obviously the play is that, we're talking about some pretty hallowed walls that have seen and heard some glorious and terrible things. And just taking that and applying it to obviously the raucousness of the place and most of the personalities that we were talking to.
Hmm. One thing that struck me while I was, reading about the film, then watching it, is that, you know, yeah, there was a lot of famous people that stayed there, and that was fun to watch them talk or see their pictures associated with the hotel and such. But, I think in a weird and quirky way, the hotel itself kind of became the star, which is kind of unusual. I guess there's some exceptions. There's other places, Hotel Miramont, whatever. Um, what do you think made the Marquis different than, say, some of the other places frequented by celebrities in the Los Angeles area?
I think one of the things that is the people who are there, the staff who are there, and the protectiveness that these people felt when they got here. It was really this closed off spot where your misbehaviors didn't make it into the press the next day, into the tabloids the next day. You could just have your life and relax and not worry about that. And I think that reputation kind of spread. Um, there may be some cases early on where room service provided more than just
I
coffee.
wonder what.
Um, Not included in the film because they, kind of unverified, but also we heard it enough that we're like, okay.
Rumor had it.
So there's probably some element of that. It's like it was a place where, I mean, Steven Tyler told me when we interviewed him for the book, you could you could do cocaine there and nobody cared. It's like you could be your bad boy self and not have to worry about the police coming in or the tabloids coming in or your wife coming in.
Hmm.
It was very protective, very safe. I think that's a big part of it. But it also wasn't like you mentioned the Marmont. It wasn't a place where people died. Um, there's a joy to it, or you could talk about the Chelsea in New York, which I think just has a darker kind of vibe. There's something, I mean, you have the poster behind you, which I think really captures the feel of the place, which is like bright and sunshiny, um, warm. There's just something very comfortable about it. It's not antique furniture. It's very, usually current, despite what it went through in the 70s.
Yeah, they didn't have to go replacing everything from the Goodwill store or something, obviously. But some people say that privacy seemed to have been its greatest luxury there. I've seen that, kind of reference from time to time. Would it be privacy or would it be discretion?
Yeah, discretion's a better word. Yeah. Um, you could get what you needed, and like I said, it wasn't going to be talked about. Nobody knows about this place. Most people who live in Los Angeles don't know about this place, and it's just on this residential street amongst apartment buildings. It's literally on a cul-de-sac just off the Sunset Strip. It's not on the Sunset Strip, and it just feels like you're removed from all that. And yeah, discretion is the perfect word for it.
Just completely random question here, totally off this, but do you happen to know Neil Norman
I do not.
down there? Okay,
No.
all right. I started talking with him. He's got, I think it's called GPR Records, and his dad had the Crescendo Club back in the day, and
Oh,
he
cool.
always
Wow.
he always hit the. In fact, he's working on a documentary, and that's the reason why I was asking if you happen to
Is
know
he
him.
working on it about the crescendo?
He's working about everything that his own because he Neil had a band called the Seeds that had some notoriety there,
Yeah.
and but he was there as a kid when his dad had the club, and was over there by the Whiskey a Go Go and all that kind of thing. So he was in the same room as Hendrix a lot, and that kind of fueled his music career. And then he inherited the record company from his dad, and he does a lot of science fiction soundtrack stuff, and I mean all sorts of things. Maybe I should put you two together because I know he's looking at getting this done and he's putting it together. I just talked to him on the phone a couple days or yesterday, I guess it was. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's a fascinating story. I'm going to start talking to him about it and get little bits from him here and there and maybe use them as shorts out on social media or something. But
Yeah.
it sounds like a fascinating story you might want to talk to him about.
Yeah.
But but on George Rosenthal, the founder of this, it appears that he kind of he had an innate understanding, I guess the way I'd put it, um, way before anybody else understood artists, especially rock artists.
Mhm.
Um, what do you think he instinctively knew that nobody else did that were catering to artists like that?
Man, it's a really good question. I think he comes from a place of kind of a rough childhood where, as it says in the film, he was the only Jewish kid growing up in his neighborhood and faced a lot of anti-Semitism. So
Mhm.
coming out to, he grew up in Massachusetts, coming out to California, Hollywood specifically, he found it to be a place where kind of anything goes and everyone is kind of accepted for better or worse. Um, and so acceptance, I think, is a really important theme. I remember one of the first things he ever said to me when I met him is that, anybody walks into a situation, a social situation, professional situation, they're uncomfortable. If you can be a person who makes them feel comfortable, they'll love you forever. And I think that's what he is capable of doing personally, but also I think that's what he created at this place. It's just, you walk into a hotel and you don't know where you are. This is a place where you are immediately catered to and made to feel at home. Um, and I think he also just had a respect for creative people, um, where it was just, let them be who they are in this place and they'll keep coming back, and I think that's
Mhm.
what he did. So I think that's the secret sauce is just, and I took that to heart in my own life, in any situation, make somebody just feel at home, make them feel comfortable. Um, we all feel this way when we walk into situations. If you
Mhm.
can do that, it really is effective.
Well, I had to be told this because I didn't realize I was doing it. Just being an empath and a people pleaser, I guess I just instinctively shoot for that. But I've been told when people watch the interviews, they feel like they're sitting in the living room with us and eavesdropping while they're talking. And I didn't have that in my production notes, but I guess just subconsciously, that's what. Relax, let's talk, let's put our feet up on the table, so to speak. And
Exactly.
um, and if somebody said this is off the record, by golly, it stayed off the record, and that's what you do. But
And by the
did
way,
Mick?
that's what we tried to do in the film as well. Like I think if you look at the setups of the interviews, it's not somebody sitting in a chair, against a brick wall with a camera in their face. Everybody's got their feet kicked up. everybody's relaxed. I mean, Morrissey's
Hmm.
in bed, for God's sake, in his pajamas.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Billy Bob, we created this backdrop of sort of a redneck barbecue where he's got the grill in his room and it's been trashed, and it just seemed to seemed to capture his persona really well. Darius Rucker comes in and we're like, "Hey, do you mind sitting on the floor?" He's like, "No, that's actually how I would sit in this room, is we would all just sit on the floor and kick back and talk." So everybody had that kind of homey vibe, for the most part. Obviously, I'm not going to make Ringo sit on the floor because he's royalty.
That's right. That's right. Well, the fact of everybody that you got, and each one of them impressed the heck out of me. The whole time I'm watching, I think these guys, man, they pulled it off, man. I was just so impressed with who all you got.
Thank you.
But then, I have a connection or two indirectly to Ringo, people very close to him or used to be. And I know that he's a tough one to get next to, and he doesn't suffer people very easily. And the fact that you guys got Ringo Starr, I mean, that spoke volumes. That was quite the coup. I got to
Yeah.
salute you on that one.
Yeah,
But
we asked him why, what he loves about the Sunset Marquis so much, and his answer was, "It's close to me home,"
yeah.
which is such a great Ringo answer.
That's right. You wouldn't expect anything less or more from him. Did making this film change the way you looked at or how you see famous musicians? I mean, I know you've been in the music scene before, and then as a writer, I'm sure you brushed up against it a lot. But working on this and talking with people like Ringo and Steven Tyler and Springsteen and the Slash and on and on and on, did it change how you see them and other famous musicians?
Yeah, I would say the thing that really changed for me was, like I said, for the most part, they're just regular people who have an extraordinary talent. There is a different air about a lot of them. Dave Grohl in particular just like has that. You get in the room with him and there's like a vibration. He's you just want to be around him. I would say the other thing, is that at this point in their careers, a lot of these people are very aware of the image, and what people expect, what to see. There's a difference between when we're off camera and we're just chit-chatting. Um, I would say, in particular, like Billy Gibbons or Slash. Slash has his hat in a box next to him. He's not wearing that all the time.
Right.
But once the camera comes on, he puts on the uniform. And Billy Gibbons said the same thing.
Showtime.
Time
Yep.
to put on the uniform. Um, and so I think that's really interesting. It is sort of a brand, and I don't mean that in a bad way at all.
No,
I think it's something that they created and something that people genuinely love and genuinely are passionate about. And that's what you're getting from them. It's like they found a thing that millions and millions of people respond to, and thank God they continue to give us this gift.
for sure. Well, I know for me, when I get to talking with people, sometimes the conversation, you just get in this zone and you forget. In my case, I forget I'm interviewing somebody. I'm thinking, God, I got to edit this now. There's 2 hours of conversation, but it's just that fun genuineness that takes place. Were there any interviews like that for you where you kind of forgot you were interviewing a celebrity?
I almost have to. Otherwise, you're weird and it's not a good interview.
Yeah, I
Um,
get that.
kind of out of nowhere, uh, Miranda Lambert came into play in this story. And we didn't know that she was a fan of the hotel. We didn't know that she had stayed there. And maybe 2 months ago, the movie was done. We'd cut it, we'd uploaded it to the internet, it was over. And we heard that she had written a new album, and her first single was called Sunset Marquis, and it's all about the Sunset Marquis. And
Wow.
so we ended up getting the rights to this song and putting it in the closing credits of the song.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
yeah, and so it just like really changed the kind of the texture of the ending of the film. to have this like really upbeat, fun, fun number at the end.
I know everybody came across, at least on the edited side of it, um, being upbeat, very conversational about it, but maybe something that hit the cutting room floor. Was there anyone that was unexpectedly, say, emotional, or that got, almost like a PTSD type of thing because of something that might have happened there that, what was there anything like that, or was it pretty much like this the whole time, even the stuff that wound up on the cutting room floor?
First of all, I got to say that our cutting room floor is the sexiest cutting room floor you've ever seen. And we are including, just as a plug, we're including bonus materials on the DVD and the Blu-ray so
All
that it has
right.
extended interviews with Gibbons, Billy Bob, Morrissey, Slash, um, and Sharon and Kelly Osbourne kind of together because they tell
Hmm.
hilarious stories. Mostly about Ozzy, obviously, but
Hmm.
just in general about being, being a family at this hotel and being a family of the son of that guy. They just have great stories. Um, so yeah, we just have, but there, I would say every interview that we had amazing stuff that just didn't fit into the kind of framework of
I
the
was going to
film.
ask you that. Yeah.
Few people got emotional, I mean, one of the things that didn't make it in the film is that so many people met their spouses at this hotel. Um, it just didn't kind of, it ran a little bit too long, once you added in a section of romances. But it's kind of crazy how many romances began and ended at the Sunset Marquis.
Hmm. Yeah, I won't ask for any other details on that. I mean, the parallel question could be how many marriages ended at the Sunset Marquis, but
I
we
mean,
won't go.
one of the stories is that Phil Collins was faxing his wife divorce papers from the Sunset Marquis.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That's the interesting. Funny thing, I was at the hotel in Switzerland that he got married in one of the times at the Beau Rivage Palace Hotel there. Beautiful place, but I understood that cost him an absolute fortune. I don't know if he's still
Yeah.
married to that wife or not, but was there
And again, if we
there
had
what
had him in the film and asked him that question, I would have asked him that and he would have talked about it. But because it's coming from like, the
third
GM
party?
or something like that, yeah, we don't
Yeah.
want to.
Was there any unbelievable story tied to the hotel that turned out to be completely true, but going into it, you and Tyler were thinking, there ain't no way. This is BS.
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know that I had a specific story. Well, yeah, actually, yeah, the Bruce Springsteen Born in the USA story. Um, okay, in case you'll see it in the film, but the story is that Bruce Springsteen was on tour in the late 70s, and he was reading Ron Kovac's Born on the Fourth of July, and just was entranced with this book. He gets to LA, they check into the Sunset Marquis. He's sitting by the pool reading his book, and who rolls over to him but Ron Kovac, the author of Born on the Fourth of July. Like, that's
Wow.
impossible that actually happened. But it did. And he told us the same story that we had heard. And Kovac took him out to a VA hospital, and it affected him so much that he went back and started writing Born in the USA. And, that's like his most popular song. I'm not saying it has to be your favorite song, but it's certainly the one that is like, an MTV stalwart and turned him
Yeah.
into the closest thing to Michael Jackson that he was ever going to become.
True.
Um,
Superstardom.
and that all happened there at the Sunset Marquis. And that just seems, we didn't believe it. There's no way that you're reading an author's book and then that author happens to be sitting at the same
What
pool,
what
but it
are
just,
the odds?
yeah. And there's a lot of things like that. There's a lot of, kind of odd connections that happened there. He helped Bob Seger write Night Moves there. Seger was kind of struggling with certain sections of the song, and they would get together and have dinner every night and talk about their work. And they kind of worked through a lot of these songwriting issues. I think Springsteen supposedly told him about, add this third bridge, and that changed the song.
Something just occurred to me, and I didn't write this down, but maybe you can answer the question. With a place like that, how did TMZ not know about it, or how come they didn't invade the place? You would think that would be a target-rich environment for them, you know?
Well, the good news is TMZ didn't exist back then.
Oh, yeah, there's that.
Cell phones didn't exist back then. And frankly, that really changed the place. It really changed the feel of it. You don't feel as safe and comfortable as you once did because you never know who's sitting around with a camera filming you.
Yeah.
They do a really good job of protecting people as much as possible. If they see somebody sitting with their cell phone recording Roger Daltrey while he's trying to eat his eggs Benedict, they're going to go over and they're going to kick you out. And so that stuff, there is still a protectiveness of it, but there just wasn't. I mean, obviously there was tabloids back then, but there's only one way in and there's only one way out. And if you're not kind of part of the club, they're going to sniff you out a little bit and make sure you belong there. And there's also this element where, if you are sitting there and Morrissey's sitting nearby, they can kind of see people start to freak out. You can see like they keep looking over and then finally they're like, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go talk to him. They'll intercept you halfway there and be like, nope,
Yep.
head over here. So, the National Enquirer just wasn't ever going to make it in there. There was one story that Morrissey told where I think somebody had like climbed up a tree. This is in the 80s. Somebody had climbed up a palm tree adjacent to the property with like a VHS camera. And remember how big those cameras were back there? Like it's on your shoulder. Like
Carrying a chainsaw.
that's a tough job to climb a tree while you have one of those over your shoulder. And so he
Hmm.
went and told security, like there's somebody up in the palm tree with a camcorder filming me. And they were kind of like, oh boy, this guy, he's so full of himself. And they go over and they look, and sure enough, there's a guy up in the tree with a VHS recorder trying to get him. And they kick him, they take care of it.
Yep. That I know for celebrities of any type, that kind of service, like we were talking about earlier, gets them earns points with the guest, and that makes it worth the extra price you pay.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
now you had interviews, you had animation, you had, rare footage. You guys did an incredible job placing that stuff at just the right time. I've watched some, they'll remain nameless, where I think whoever produced it learned how to use the particular tool and they kept reusing it all through the film. It's like, all right, already, you know how to do that trick. But you guys had a very nice balance of what you used and when. How did you know when to use each? Was it just intuition, or how did you guys pull that off?
I think it was our best idea and also our worst idea. Best because I think it is really original and it really makes the film unique and fun, and it's sort of a breath of fresh air as you're watching all of
Mhm.
this. Worst idea because it was really hard to do. We actually used 7 or 8 different animators for each section because we wanted it to
Mhm.
have a different look and a different feel depending on who the artist was, depending what era it was. Um, and as far as when to use it, we knew when we were interviewing somebody, we would look over at each other and be like, that's an animation right there. Like Michael DeBar telling the story about seeing Iggy Pop swimming in the pool. Um, I mean, he actually had like 5 of them that we could have animated, but
Or
um,
more.
yeah, or more. Or Springsteen, Stephen Van Zandt telling the story about hearing Born to Run for the first time and Springsteen throwing it into the pool. Those just feel like moments that you want to be in. And we wanted to bring it to life in a way that wasn't a kind of cheesy recreation. It's hard to recreate Springsteen. It's hard to recreate Slash. Again, there's an energy, there's a vibe,
Yep.
there's an actor, I think, that can really capture that sort of thing, which is why biopics suffer sometimes. So we just
Yeah.
wanted it to be a little bit more fun than, kind of the cable network recreation.
You guys did a great job on that. Which, to all that point, the different, judging what to use when, was there a sequence, I guess the right way of putting it, a sequence that took the longest to build, to put
Mm,
together?
yeah. The Slash's drug trip was the worst. And we didn't get it until like the morning that we were premiering the film.
Really? Oh,
I don't know
wow.
why it was so hard to do, but I guess maybe because it's sort of a personal story that you want to get right with
Hmm.
respect. Um, and so yeah, we just spent a lot of time on that one. The Springsteen Born in the USA as well, because actually originally we didn't have Springsteen in the film until again after we'd finished it, and then we heard that he was willing to sit down for an interview. So we had to re-edit the whole film but you do that for Bruce Springsteen, obviously.
Right.
So yeah, those sequences were probably the most challenging.
Was there a scene, I guess the right way to put it would be, was there a scene that you felt like almost broke you, either your spirit or your budget?
Oh yeah, budget wise, probably not so much. That's the good thing about animation is the budget is the budget. You don't
Hmm.
go above that. Spirit wise, again, that Slash drug trip was just very, very challenging to get right.
Yeah, I bet. When you were, was there a period of time during the filming of this that you just thought, I mean, I know going into it because you had already written the book, you already kind of knew this, but over and above what you already knew as you guys were working on the film, was there a point where you just said, man, we really got something special? Because I know sometimes with interviews, I'll hear something, and I think, I hope people hear this because this is something, you know.
Mm.
For you, was there any moment like that in the filming?
It felt like when Dave Grohl agreed to do it, because that was pretty early on. We had talked to a few. You always start with the photographers because they have all the stories and they kind of lead you towards who you want to talk to. But when Dave
Hmm.
Grohl agreed to do it, it felt like it added a lot of credibility to the roster. And where he goes, a lot of people, you know, feel comfortable going, I suppose. It gives it, like I said, some legitimacy. And then sitting with him, he just had some really good, and again, they didn't all make it into the film, but it was very honest and open. And he talks about Cobain. He talks about, some of the other folks of that generation and his relationships with them at the hotel. He actually met his wife there. So he has a great story about meeting her there, and said something to the effect of, he wouldn't have his family if it weren't for the Sunset Marquis. Those authentic moments make you realize that this means something. There's another guy, his name's Merck Mercuriadis, who's in it. He's a big manager. He owns Music, which like owns the rights to pretty much all of your favorite
Everything.
musicians' songs.
Yeah.
He's the one who's given them hundreds of millions of dollars.
And
Um,
also the guy that issues the takedown notices on YouTube. So
there,
I
yeah.
have a friend. So
He told a story about just what the place means to his family. His daughter was going through a hard time, and instead of going anywhere else in the world that they could have gone, she wanted to go to the Sunset Marquis and be with, staff member X, Y, and Z, um, who kind of cared for her and meant a lot to her. And that kind of, revitalized her. So I think stories like that are different.
Yeah.
It's different than the normal stuff that you hear, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I think
TV's out of the levels of the right. So
we have that in there too,
I
but
know.
there's a little more depth to it than that. I think
That's right.
that's what's great. So you can throw a TV out of any window.
That's right. But not necessarily always at the Sunset Marquis. Somebody I saw in there that I was surprised to see, I don't know why, but I just would have not have associated him with the hotel, and that was Joe Bonamassa. I'm a huge fan of his.
Uh-huh.
Interviewed him 3 or 4 times, but I didn't realize he had a tie to the Marquis. That was a big surprise for me.
Yeah,
So,
I think he was probably introduced to the place by a photographer named Robert Knight, who has a penchant for finding really good guitar players and photographing them early on in their careers. He has a very long list of doing this, and Joe is one of them. And I think he's the one who introduced him to this hotel. And I don't know if you know about this or not, but Joe, obviously has an insane guitar collection, one of the best in the
uh,
world. And part of his collection and part of his museum is at the Sunset Marquis. So you walk
I
in.
didn't know that.
Yeah, so part of the what does he call it? The Bonacea,
Nerdville, the
Nerdville.
Nerdville. Yeah.
These extraordinarily rare guitars are
Mm.
hanging in very protected cases as you walk through the breezeway of the hotel. And you can stop and
Wow.
learn about them and look at them, can't touch them. But yeah, he has a very strong relationship with the hotel. And man, he was a great interview. Again, cutting room floor with that guy. It's really good.
Yep. He's my favorite part with him is the second time I interviewed him was after COVID. And I brought it up because during COVID he was doing this thing at the Ryman and I you could pay to have a if you send in a picture and $100, you'd get a cutout if you place somewhere in one of the seats in the Ryman Auditorium. And then when the video came out, you would get a video. Being a big fan, feeling sorry for artists, knowing that he was supporting artists less fortunate than him, you're not supporting him, but helping them out,
Yeah.
through fundraising and such. And I was doing well at the time. I went ahead and did it. So I brought all that up to him. And so he's talking about, some of the ridiculousness he had to deal with in Nashville to make that video. But then I brought up something about Rolling Stone magazine. Oh my gosh, he gave me clickbait like you wouldn't believe. He just went off on those guys. I
Yeah.
thought, because I'm not a big Rolling Stone magazine fan anyway, but boy, he unloaded on them. I'm thinking, I love this.
Yeah. When they get
This is
real,
great.
when artists get
But that
real.
that's
Yeah.
right. Don't hold back there, Joe. And he was effing this, and that's a hill I'll die on, and all that. And I was just like, wow, I pulled that cork.
Yeah. That's great.
So, what's your favorite story that the audiences will hear in this? And I don't want you to blow the whole thing, but whether it's a funny story, wild story, touching moment, what I guess another way of putting it would be, is there a story from any of those descriptions that's a story that really stays with you as the director, co-director from this film?
There's so many. Like I said, not all of them made it into the film.
Hmm.
Um, I go back to the Springsteen story. I just think it's an extraordinary story that you won't hear anyplace else. Stories of relationships and partying. It's hard to pick one that sticks with me. I think one that didn't make it into the film that I can certainly relate to is the reason that Slash discovered the place was that his favorite band was Aerosmith. And as a teenager, he and one of his friends went and camped out in front of the hotel to try to get a glimpse of Joe Perry and the rest of the band because that was his idol. And they kind of camped out, and his friend ended up sneaking into the hotel and sneaking into Joe Perry's room and coming out with like a bag of chips, a cigarette butt, and a guitar pick. And he was kind of like, this is Joe Perry's shit, you know? Yeah, I love stuff like that. I love the idea that somebody like Slash was once a fan, you know, and now he's on the inside and, you know, just a nice guy. And by the way, when we interviewed him, I had my family there. Tyler had his family there. We all ended up just hanging out with Slash, and he was so nice to our kids, you know, like just family, you know, all of these people feel like family. And that's one thing to take away from this is that uh, it is a community. It is a place where these people can gather and exchange ideas. And it just felt great to be a part of that for a little while.
I can only imagine. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of Slash, and that I had no idea this would be prompted in me, but I got a quick, cool story that I don't think you know. Maybe you've heard this. So the Beatles rooftop concert. If you watch that, there's a gentleman walking around by name of Ken Mansfield wearing a white overcoat. He's sitting two people down on the bench from Yoko, next to Maureen Starr, all that. He was a mucky muck with Capitol Records. He just happened to be there. Had no idea this was going to go on. So, time moves on. He writes several books, and I interview him several times. This is before Zoom, and I got all of his books. And in one of the books, I forget which one it was, he tells the story that while in his record producing days, his son was hanging out with this kid, and he would come over to the studio and he would be watching Ken work and all that. Turned out the kid was Slash. And so Ken sadly has passed away, but he and I developed a friendship of sorts. I could reach him anytime. And like I
Yeah.
said, I interviewed him several times. I shipped him all of his books that I had of his, and he autographed every one of them. I got him proudly sitting on my shelf in my office. But to tie a bow around that, where I even kind of got to know someone else tied to Ringo was through Ken, and that was Ringo's ex-fiance, Nancy Lee Andrews, and quite a lady. She's got an incredible story herself to tell, written several books, that kind of thing. But anyway, you realize real quick what a small world this all really is.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Absolutely. Yeah.
I know I've spent a lot more time than I thought you would be able to give me, and I'm very grateful for it all. But quickly, what's next with regards to this film, and when can people see it, and in what formats, and all that kind of thing?
So it's available August 14th. You can find it on Apple, you can find it on Amazon Prime, and you can find it at our website, ifthesewallscouldrock.com. And on the website is actually where you'll find a lot of the bonus material, director's
Hmm.
commentary, where we kind of tell fun stories along the way, along with Mark Rosenthal. He's in there as well. He's a great guy. And then we're doing a week-long run here in LA at the landmark Sunset. We have some great Q&As lined up. Friday night is Lzzy Hale and Allison Hagendorfer in the film, and Saturday night we have Sharon Osbourne.
Very cool. What's next for you film-wise?
Well, we're trying to figure it out. You know, there's always new stories to be told. Like I said, I've mostly made my living as a writer, so I've been kind of hunkered down working on some screenplays.
Very cool. Well, man, my door is always open to you. If you ever have something that you'd like help getting the word out, I don't have the largest audience in the world, but I have a loyal one, and I would love to do my part to help you get the word out. And if there's ever any time I can help you or Tyler out by just helping get the word out, I'd love to do it. I'd be honored to do so.
Thank you. And you know, we really appreciate you, Randy, and what you do and your audience, you know, the baby boomers specifically. This is the perfect movie for them.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's got all the greatest hits, you know, everybody's
Yep.
in this film. So, you know, we were thrilled to do this interview, and I really hope you guys check out the film. It's a fun ride. It's got a little bit of heart. You might even cry. So
You'll
thank you.
blush some.
Yeah. That too. All of the things. So thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, Craig, take care, stay safe, and hope to talk to you again soon down the road.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. This has been another fun-filled episode of Boomerocity with your host and producer, Randy Patterson. The theme song for Boomerocity is Roll the Dice and is recorded and used by permission from Quentin Hope. Quentin is spelled Quinten, and Hope is Hop as in Paul, E. And you can find out more about Quentin Hope and his music at quintenhope.com. Post-production is done by Cardinal Sins Productions. The Boomerocity name, logo, and content is copyright protected. Segments may only be used with written permission by Boomerocity and or its assignees. Inquiries should be directed to input@boomerocity.com. Copyright 2026.
You know what's wild? Most people are still overpaying for car insurance just because it's a pain to switch. That's why there's Jerry. Jerry's the only app that compares rates from over 50 insurers in minutes and helps you switch fast with no spam calls or hidden fees. Drivers who save with Jerry could save over $1,300 a year. Before you renew your car insurance policy, do yourself a favor. Download the Jerry app or head to jerry.ai/Libsyn. That's jerry.ai/LIBSYN.
This summer, turn your gifting game up during the Summer Plant and Garden Sale at 1-800-Flowers.com. Right now, you can score up to 30% off succulents, bonsais, fresh-cut blooms, and more. Whether you're celebrating a birthday, sending a thank you, or a just-because surprise, 1-800-Flowers lets you save big on a stunning selection of gifts. Save up to 30% off during the Summer Plant and Garden Sale at 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast. Gift something unforgettable today.